Today, we kick off the Summer Sermons by Other People series. We will hear a sermon titled Waiting in the Garden by Scott Alexander, to be read by Brynn, Albanese, who is making her first appearance in our pulpit today. Brynn.
I get my own little boost up here. Otherwise, I'd be down here going, hi. Good morning, everyone. So my name is Brynn Albanese, and I am a semi-retired concert stage violinist. At the beginning of the pandemic, when I found my schedule really for the next 2 years had been wiped clean in less than 48 hours, I decided it was time to answer a calling that had been knocking at my door for quite some time. I put myself through a rigorous online education program to become an end-of-life doula and a therapeutic music practitioner. Currently, I am a graduate of both of those programs, and I have now entered into my independent practicum towards that certification process. My practice is focused on our local hospitals, skilled nursing facilities, and memory care centers. This sermon that I have chosen to read this morning has spoken so loudly and so clearly to me on so many levels. Some that were even hidden from me, very deep in my soul. I hope you enjoy these amazing words from the Reverend Minister, Scott Alexander. Reverend Alexander is a seasoned, experienced, and widely respected Unitarian Universalist minister of 48 years so far. He's still practicing. And he was ordained in the First Church of Holton, Maine in 1974, where he began his ministry. Since that time, Reverend Alexander has served as UU minister in New Jersey, Massachusetts, and Maryland, and currently he resides as minister in the congregation in Vero Beach, Florida. He is very active and well-respected in the LGBTQ+ community and is the author and editor of 5 books. He travels widely through the Unitarian Universalist denominations, speaking and preaching and offering in-depth workshops on sermon writing and a variety of congregational and faith-related subjects. Alexander lives with his partner of 40+ years, Henry Collins Mikesell, who is a senior analyst for the Association of American Medical Colleges located in Washington, D.C. So I present to you Waiting in the Garden. This morning, I want us to grapple with one of the most universal and troubling facts of human existence. Though every last one of us would have it otherwise, it is an unavoidable reality that during our lifetimes, people close to us will become sick, suffer great pain, and in some cases, die. It seems crucial that we be unafraid here in this religious community in acknowledging the tragic dimension of life, for surely there is no one here in this room this morning who can reasonably expect to escape the agony of watching other human beings for whom we love and care go through pain and death. Ours is a profoundly mortal creation, and we often live our lives as though it is otherwise. The truth is that to live is to suffer the vulnerabilities and vicissitudes of the flesh. So if we are to live our life and live out our years with wisdom, compassion, and health, it seems essential that we prepare ourselves psychologically and spiritually for those inevitable times when we will be asked to share life for those whom life is painfully slipping away. Surely such times are amongst life's most difficult. One of the toughest things any one of us can face is the helplessness and anxiety we feel when we are obliged to watch someone dear to us suffer. It is almost worse, I think, than suffering the same infirmity yourself. I doubt also that there is any human being alive who does not feel profound discomfort, anger, and angst watching a loved one endure disease, pain, or death. I have never met anyone who did not find dealing with the human tragedy close at hand and a heart-wrenching and disquieting thing. No matter how wise or brave or worldly we might be, we are all face a real crisis when life demands that we be near the suffering of others. When a family member, neighbor, or dear friend must battle disease, debilitation, or death, we never know quite how to handle ourselves. Even the most adept of us never know quite what to do, what to say, or how to help. We tend to feel terribly awkward or inadequate. We quite naturally want to intensely make it all better, to take away the pain or problem, to find a solution, speed a recovery, engineer a miracle, even when such things are not possible. The greatest human tragedies occur, in my experience, not when the trouble strikes our loved ones, but rather when our feelings of anxiety, helplessness, and discomfort with their pain can cause us, unconsciously and unwittingly, of course, to perhaps flee the situation, to avoid the person, or deny the reality of what is really happening. In a decade of the ministry that the ministry has brought me, it's brought me this. It has taught me when illness and pain strike, the most important medicine is other persons. An ordinary human being who stays close and caring no matter what. And I believe that if we spiritually challenge ourselves to think and feel about just how we can or should be with others in the midst of their tragedies, we can actually learn how to become much more helpfully human in difficult times. There is a reading which is the familiar story of the Garden of Gethsemane, when Jesus, knowing in his heart that he faces almost certain death the next day at the hands of the Roman authorities, goes to that beautiful garden to relieve some of his suffering and pain through his prayer. He has a very private crisis of the soul, but the key to the story is that he does not go to that garden alone. He asks the three of his most beloved friends, Peter, James, and John, to join him. In the part of the story that I find most significant, Jesus, troubled and tormented as he is, asks only one simple thing of his dear companions. "Sit here while I pray," he implores. "Remain here and watch." He doesn't ask them to spirit him away from the danger or wrestle with God for him or offer theological comfort or suggest some political situation for dealing with Pilate, or even to go the next day to be crucified for him. Instead, he only asks that they stay awake and stand the night's watch with him, remaining attentive to his pain and sorrow. And the story tells us how Peter and James and John sadly failed their friend Jesus, for they found him asleep, not once, but 3 times. Out of their own fear or exhaustion, or selfishness, or indifference, we must suppose they are unable to simply stay awake in his hours of deep need. And Jesus' pain is magnified many times by his aloneness and that he feels in the midst of his friends. By the shadow of negative example, this story speaks with a powerful clarity as to just how we must strive to be with loved ones who are in profound personal pain. And in fact, all that is usually requested and required of us, all that should be asked of us, is to stay awake when persons near us are swept into suffering. Our human job is to stand faithfully the night watch, to not fall asleep, absolutely refuse to abandon the one who hurts. I have been in the garden. Have you? The night my father died 3 years ago was the night of my own Gethsemane of the heart. At 2:30 a.m., I was wakened by the word of my beloved father's sudden death and what saved me in the night of deep and pain was simply a friend. My best friend, in fact, who drove 10 miles to be with me. My friend got out of bed to stand the long night watch, to listen to my repetitious ramblings, to permit my tears, to hold me against the winter of my grief, to stay awake, by God, simply awake. It was mostly a silent vigil that he stood, for in my hour of grief, I did not particularly want the wisdom of the centuries from my friend, nor any theological comfort he might have, nor nuggets of sage advice, nor even someone to take firm control. All I wanted was another human being to protect me from the cold and to make sure that I was not alone in the empty caverns of my pain. If there is a pure and more redeeming kind of love, I don't know of it. Do you all know what I speak? Haven't most of you had the experience of learning in some dark night of your own body or soul that it is the gentle, faithful presence of another ordinary human being which best answers, softens, and heals the pain? Yes, it is the simple yet divine grace of another person's caring presence which has the spectacular power to save us from our deepest suffering. And yet there is something about the strikingly simple reality that we Americans seem to distrust. Somehow it feels inadequate. It seems if it couldn't possibly be enough. As we live in an impatient, fix-it society and have been indoctrinated since birth to believe that we just bring the right technical and intellectual resources to bear, we can, when faced with a human problem, make everything right and put an end to all of the unpleasantness. As a result, then, we are not naturally comfortable with the idea that presence rather than product is what could save the situation. We find it hard to believe that just to be is the solution. We are disinclined to trust that the gift of ourselves is enough. And this insecurity leads so often to the presence of tragedy to try to rescue others from their suffering. In the face of an awesome and often confounding mysteries of birth and death, life and suffering, we are best to hold our tongues when in doubt of what to say that might comfort. Why can't we trust the value of caring silence shared through those who are suffering? Believe me, when someone you love is swept up into tragedy, your faithful presence speaks with an eloquence no words can possibly possess. The mere fact of you staying in the garden of their pain with them says that your concern and love are deep and real. Your refusal to disappear says to the suffering, as nothing else can, that their creation remains a place of love, grace, and hope. Without uttering one word, we can help the ones who hurt to know that their world continues in a cosmological sense to be a grace-filled and nurturing place. It lets them know, if I may wax theological for just a moment, that the Holy Spirit is alive and well, and it is able to touch them. So rather than speak with your lips, speak with your presence. Let your eyes, your hands, your silence, your faithfulness tell the story. These are the enduring answers to suffering and pain which remain to bless long after the hollow ring of bumper sticker slogans have faded into the oblivion where they belong. Why is it, dear friends, that we Americans have such a dreadfully difficult time understanding that hurting human beings are not asking us to be gods, saviors, magicians, physicians, or wizards? When will we begin to believe that the only credential we need to be humanly with those who are suffering or dying is the credential of an open, gentle heart? Many of you have shared with me in private conversation, and sometimes when someone who you love is hurting. You have found yourself staying away simply because of the discomfort of not knowing precisely what to say or do. Well, I will tell you now what I always say in such a situation. For God's sake, don't do anything or don't say anything at all. Just go. Simply get up and go. You may say the wrong thing. It's easy to put your foot in your mouth when someone is suffering or dying. I've had that happen to me. But you must nonetheless trust that grace and holiness and power of your simple human presence and touch is much more ever transforming and healing than you could ever imagine. Why do we human beings have such terrible theological self-esteem? Why are we in doubt that the highest power in the universe so well, however we see that, through our own fundamental humanness? There is an old Eastern legend in the origin of divinity, which tells us that the gods became jealous of humanity, and they were fearful that the gift of divinity would be stolen from them. So they had counsel. And some said, let us place our gift in the skies. Others said, no, they will search the skies. They will even fly. And others said, let's put our gift of divinity in the depth of the ocean. And the reply was, no, they will plumb the ocean. Someday they will be on the floor of the seas and they will find the gift. And the wisest of the gods said, let's hide divinity within them, because that is the last place that they will look. Yes, dear friends, the last place we look for divinity, the last place we expect to find the highest, most healing powers of creation is actually within ourselves. Within our ordinary human hearts, beating in simple compassion, gentleness, and love. We can't believe that within us lie some of the most precious powers of creation, powers of capable blessing, healing, even saving other persons. The process, theologians say, God is a verb, a dynamic process that happens whenever we simply love and care for one another. The Jewish theologian Martin Buber spoke of the I-thou encounter, that human meeting when the truly divine powers of the creation come to life along the mysterious arc of the significant, caring person-to-person encounter. What I believe, because I've seen it time and time again, is that God, whatever we mean by that lovely, simple word, steals up on gentle feet whenever we are brave and loving enough to keep the night's watch for someone else in their midnight of pain. The highest and holiest beauty of the universe comes into being when we simply stay awake for one another. Let me tell you of a recent experience that I had, which reminds me so of a lovely clarity that this is so. I was invited by a family of the church to the nursing home bedside of a man they love, a husband and father whose life was rapidly slipping away from the body-crushing boot of Alzheimer's disease. As his wife said later to me over the phone, Scott, I feel like I'm losing my best friend, and it is so hard. On the day I went to the convalescent center with the man's wife and son, we were unable to rouse this once brilliant scientist from his partial coma. No verbal or cognitive relationship was possible. And so his wife, without as much as a conscious thought, I am sure, expressed her love and devotion in the only way that she could. She reached over to the bedside drawer and took out his battered old hairbrush. She began gently stroking his gray and matted hair. With total attentiveness and care, she stroked his hair again and again, as though the whole world depended on each stroke. As she did her loving work, I found myself wanting to look away, not because it was sad or unpleasant or depressing, not because I am afraid to see people die or suffer. I wanted to look away because I was embarrassed to share in so intimate and so perfect a moment of love. Had it not been for the professional defenses that I have long since erected to protect me against such pure and holy moments, I would have wept merely at witnessing the beauty and fidelity of her love. I like the way my friend and colleague Edward Frost of Princeton puts it. We have heard that God is all the goodness, all the sweetness, and light and joy in the morning. But God is also the cries that we do not hear, the depth of hell the others suffer, the darkness and confusion of the permanent night. God may be the chaos missed in our neatness and order, who shuns the glistening temple to walk the gray repositories of twisted and divided souls. To seek such a God is to seek discomfort, to walk in another's broken shoes through the eye of the inner storm, and be bent and broken with him. God is the one who cries, "Know me," through the mouths of those we choose not to know. We have heard that God is love, but God is the demand to love, a demand unheeded, thus a God undiscovered. Press through the grown over path to another's loneliness, and there with him, the bearer of his pain is God. Yes, May Sarton poem had it right. Only the living can be healed by love. Only when we are brave and beautiful enough to stand with another in simple human compassion and faithfulness are we saved from life's negation and despair. We will always have time to choke back the natural human fear that rises in the throat whenever we draw close to pain, death, and the vivid reminders of our own mortality. We will always have to fight the temptation to flee. I am sure that even those exceptionally brave individuals in our congregation who are voluntarily giving so much time to hospice programs in our area, even they who seek out this tough human work must have their moments of extreme discomfort and fear. No one should ever suggest that to attend someone in their Gethsemane of pain is fashionable or fun. It is always tough. To stay awake through the long night of someone else's sorrow and pain is the most difficult of all human wakings, but I believe Norman Cousins is right on target when he writes, "Death is not the enemy. Living in constant fear of it is." The way we choose to live and then the depths of our feelings, our ability to love and to be loved, and to take in all the colors of the world around us, these determine the worth and true extent of whatever time we have. That clock keeps ticking away. Our job is to put as much meaning as possible into the intervals between the ticks. A minute can open up into a vast realm in which all our senses, finely attuned, can come into full and splendid play. Or those same senses can be shut down, imparting nothing to our ears except numbers. More than 3,000 years ago, the psalmist cried out for each man and woman to be a candle of the Lord, shining into the utmost dark. I believe that this is as theologically sound as anything ever written. Yes, dear friends, it is our years are to be something more than numbers. We must control our fear of suffering, disease, and death, and not to be afraid when these realities truly draw near. To offer others the simple gift of ourselves. I know many of you find it hard to believe, but for ours is a technocratic, death-fearing culture that seems to seek the quick fix for suffering. To come to a close this morning, I pray that you will both trust and use that high and holy light which glimmers in unquenchable brightness and power within you. Please do not doubt the healing warmth of your ordinary, expansive heart. When someone you know is hurting, be there. Just be there. Give them the gift of staying awake through the long night in the garden, standing the faithful night watch. Keep the everyday light and loving flow from your hands and heart, from your precious presence is holy. It is enough. And by God, it will see us through. Thank you very much.